Do you miss your grandmother?
I do actually, yeah, I do miss my grandmother and my grandfather, particularly being in Windsor. For me, Windsor is hers. Sometimes I'd come round and have a bit of tea with her because she had the best teas ever. So I used to get well fed.
On February 3rd, 2026, Buckingham Palace quietly released a 2-paragraph statement that detonated like a depth charge across royal households and legal chambers in Britain. Prince William had been named the sole beneficiary of one of the monarchy's most secretive and historically significant private estates, not Sandringham, not Balmoral, not Windsor, but something older, something hidden, something Queen Elizabeth II had been protecting for decades. When Camilla and her son Tom discovered what had been transferred to William and what had been deliberately withheld from them, the fury inside palace walls was unlike anything staff had witnessed in a generation. This is a story of estates, clauses, and confrontations. From the Queen's handwritten covenants to Tom Parker BS' collapsed commercial schemes, to the moment Camilla silently watched William sign away her ambitions forever. This was not just an inheritance, it was Queen Elizabeth II's final, unanswerable chess move. The Cedar estate, older than most memories, traces its origin not to 2026, but to 1944, during the darkest chapter of the Second World War, when King George VI, facing the existential uncertainty of wartime Britain, quietly purchased a secluded property deep within the Chiltern Hills on the border of Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire. Designed to disappear from public record, the Cedar estate had no royal registry listing, no media acknowledgement, and existed only in whispered conversations among senior courtiers for over 8 decades. Why maintain such a secret for 80 years? The answer, revealed in internal briefing notes shared with the Royal Correspondent Guild on February 3rd, 2026, was astonishing. A private chapel with a memorial vault for royal family members who served in armed conflict. Archival chambers holding 186 oak chests of wartime correspondence and confidential communications. 72 previously undisclosed royal portraits, including unseen oil paintings of King George VI and Princess Margaret, and 14 sealed audio recordings of Queen Elizabeth II in private dialogue with Winston Churchill, Nelson Mandela, Ronald Reagan, and Charles de Gaulle. One archivist described the collection as not a museum, but the raw, unfiltered architecture of royal memory, a window into the private soul of the monarchy itself. Between 2017 and 2021, Prince William had been visiting the estate privately, walking the cedar groves with the Queen, reviewing wartime correspondence, cataloguing naval dispatches, refiling hundreds of letters from Second World War soldiers, and even repairing archival moisture control systems not out of ceremonial duty, but stewardship by conviction. The Queen herself noted in a handwritten annotation, "He will inherit more than the crown. He will inherit the silence that preserved it." The Cedar estate's transfer was made possible through a private legal mechanism called a covenant trust, created in 2020 under Charter Seal 0142, witnessed by the Queen's personal solicitor, a constitutional advisor, and a notary from the Royal Archives, with a delayed activation clause triggered only after the Queen's state funeral and William's public recognition as heir to institutional responsibility, both conditions now fulfilled. The official statement confirmed it plainly. The Cedar estate would pass in full and exclusive guardianship to the Prince of Wales, effective immediately. Simple words, irreversible consequences, but not everyone received the news quietly. And here is where the story shifts from inheritance to confrontation. With quiet determination, Camilla and Tom pursued plans that were never meant to be discovered. Multiple sources have confirmed what palace insiders had long suspected. Queen Camilla and her son, Tom Parker BS, had been strategically angling to bring the Cedar estate under their influence for years. Beginning in late 2024, Camilla pushed internally for what she called a Windsor Cultural Legacy Centre, a vision that outwardly celebrated British heritage through gourmet retreats, literary salons highlighting female royal narratives, and intimate historical tours of the cedar groves. Beneath the surface, however, the ambitions were far more self-serving. Tom saw profit where others saw tradition, envisioning a Michelin-grade restaurant inside the old hunting lodge, an artisanal brand called Royal Wild with cedar-aged cheeses, estate honey, wild trout, and seasonal Highland wines, and exclusive, high-end events cloaked in the guise of royal heritage. On October 18, 2025, a leaked briefing note revealed that Tom's legal team was exploring whether portions of the estate could be reclassified under public heritage law, potentially weakening William's exclusive claim and opening the door to shared management. Does that sound like respect for a sacred royal legacy, or a commercial takeover in Heritage's clothing? In November 2025, Camilla hosted a private reception near Henley-on-Thames, inviting heritage donors, food critics, and art historians. On the surface, it celebrated rural sustainability, but attendees described it as a trial balloon, a rehearsal for a public-private stewardship model that would place control of the Cedar estate in Camilla's foundation and outside donors' hands. William, learning of the event, politely but firmly declined to participate, maintaining the Queen's original vision without compromise. 3 weeks later, he activated the Covenant Trust, reclaiming Northacre Hall, the estate Camilla had assumed she already controlled. Northacre Hall, a sprawling 1,200-acre property nestled among Wiltshire's ancient hedgerows and Berkshire's rolling hills, had long been a discreet royal retreat, hosting hunting weekends and sensitive diplomatic gatherings. Its combination of historical prestige, agricultural revenue, and untapped licensing rights tied to an 800-year legacy made it, according to commercial assessments, a uniquely strategic royal asset. What made this transfer particularly remarkable was the timing. Documents dated September 8, 2022, weeks before the Queen's passing, revealed that she had formally reclassified Northacre Hall from a shared Crown estate asset to a personal sovereign holding, enabling a private transfer through her rather than institutional succession. In Appendix A3, she wrote, "Let Northacre remain with the child who bears the burden of our future. Let it be not merely shelter, but sanctuary." The decision bypassed both Prince Charles, now King, and Princess and, sending ripples of quiet shock through the inner royal circle, like a stone dropped into still water at midnight. Victoria's Highland reallocation in 1872 had been executed in absolute secrecy, witnessed by only 2 living figures, Lady Sarah Chatsworth and the late Queen's legal advisor, Sir Alastair Denholm. The sealed envelope marked with 3 words, "For the reign after me." But Camilla had not been idle. By 2023, leaked notes from a palace aide confirmed that she and Tom had been quietly lobbying to incorporate Northacre Hall into a royal culinary heritage venture, publicly framed as a farm-to-table revival, but backed privately by luxury investors from the UAE and a Paris-based venture capital firm. Their plans envisioned a 5-star boutique hotel, a heritage cooking school, and a complete rebranding of the estate as a luxury Windsor destination, with a commercial feasibility study from July 2025 valuing Northacre Hall's licensing rights alone at over £48 million across 10 years. One insider summarized the moment with precision. Camilla believed she had softly bought the estate through influence. The Queen had outmaneuvered her from beyond the grave. Meanwhile, a campaign of whispers and subtle pressure was orchestrated by Camilla's longtime fixer, Maurice Lello, a retired PR consultant known for palace back-channel games, with anonymous think pieces appearing in late 2025 suggesting the monarchy had overinvested in heritage assets and needed to recalibrate generational equity. In a final push, Tom allegedly attempted to secure a lease on the Northacre Southern Orchard tract, claiming unused arable land, only to be denied by the Duchy of Cornwall legal team, citing inheritance protection, leaving Camilla stunned and furious not with anger, but with the colder fury of being outflanked by a dead woman. Meanwhile, the Queen's most personal covenant, Clarence Hill Estate, emerged as the story's most emotionally resonant chapter. In mid-January 2026, Princess and conducted a forensic review of the Queen's private correspondence at Windsor's Oak Room, discovering a tri-folded leather folio bearing the mark of William George. Inside was a directive unlike anything the family had seen. Clarence Hill Estate, purchased quietly in 1947 by King George VI as a private reserve for direct heirs, insulated from Parliament, public scrutiny, and royal funding, was entrusted in full title and spirit to her grandson William. The Queen's handwritten instructions were clear and personal. The estate was to remain outside the Crown estate, free of encumbrance, immune to politics and scandal, a covenant meant to guard the moral line of succession. Sources indicate the Queen's insistence on moral insulation reflected her concern over controversies surrounding Prince Andrew and Prince Harry, making Clarence Hill a sanctuary and ethical compass for William and Catherine. Camilla learned of the transfer on January 20th and immediately convened her legal team at High Rove alongside Tom, whose recent publishing contract had collapsed amid scandal tied to his food brand's misuse of the royal crest. Clarence Hill, to Camilla, was a commercial opportunity, and by January 23rd, she had drafted a proposal under Hill and Crown Limited, positioning Tom as the Prince of Green Britain, with a boutique hospitality and agricultural brand emphasizing regenerative luxury, climate resilience, and royal sustainability. But the legal transfer to the Duchy of Cornwall Trust had already been completed, leaving Hill and Crown Limited 3 weeks too late. Then, on January 28th, a leak from an anonymous whistleblower, believed by some to be a disillusioned former aide, forwarded the internal Hill and Crown business deck to the Lord Chancellor's office, exposing the attempted commercial takeover in vivid detail. Rebranding strategies, speculative luxury valuations, and mock-ups of Clarence Hill with corporate logos airbrushed over its Edwardian facade, sealing Camilla and Tom's ambitions as undone. The backlash was immediate and total. William confronted Camilla at Windsor during a private lunch meant to honor Catherine's recovery, and sources close to the royal household described the exchange as brief but devastating. William reportedly said, "Clarence Hill does not exist to be bottled, branded, or sold. It is the last sanctuary of my grandmother's soul, and I will protect it as I protect my wife and children." Camilla left without finishing her meal. Within 48 hours, Hill and Crown Limited was dissolved, and Tom withdrew from 3 public appearances, citing stress-related fatigue. No formal statements were issued, but inside the palace, the message was unambiguous. King Charles, refusing direct engagement with the confrontation, later confided in Princess, and with a line that has since passed into royal household legend: "Elizabeth always knew who would hold the crown, not just wear it." Just when the dust from Clarence Hill seemed to settle, a new battleground emerged, audacious beyond anything that had come before: Greystone Downs. A protected estate of over 400 acres of ancient woodland. It boasted a Tudor hunting lodge dating to 1578, and a private stone chapel adorned with 17th century relics. Queen Elizabeth had spent more than 4 decades preserving it as both a retreat and a living archive of royal moral code, leaving it to William not merely as heir to property, but as heir to restraint, stewardship, and quiet dignity. Camilla and Tom saw it differently. Valued at £80 million, Greystone Downs became their most coveted target, with ambitions that were both staggering in scale and audacity. 5,000 per night eco-lodges, curated farm-to-table dining hosted by Tom, and an elite members-only royal culinary circle targeting clients from the UAE and East Asia, all packaged as a Windsor sanctuary, a premium brand built on someone else's heritage. Behind the scenes, Camilla's legal liaison, Sir Piers Mullery, probed the will for any clause that might allow shared custodianship or heritage collaboration, while Tom quietly registered Stag Crown Hospitality Limited in Luxembourg 3 weeks before the Queen's will became public. Plans recovered by palace aides included converting the estate's chapel into a mindfulness retreat and transforming stables, once home to Elizabeth's prized ponies, into a wellness vineyard spa. Then Princess and intercepted a confidential email between Camilla's lawyer and a peer in the House of Lords, immediately sharing her findings with William in a tone far more chilling than outrage. "She's not challenging the crown, she's challenging mother's ethics." William convened a closed-door strategy session with the Privy Purse, and what followed was a swift, total legal counteroffensive. The sealed codicil released to the Royal Archives on February 3, 2026, written in the Queen's hand and notarized in 2021, explicitly barred any material transformation, commercial conversion, or brand exploitation of Greystone Downs without William's express approval. The clause was a direct rebuke, proof that Elizabeth had anticipated the challenge and prepared for it years in advance. A palace footman who served during the confrontation described Camilla opening the envelope bearing the Queen's monogram. She read it twice in complete silence before speaking 4 words no one present will ever forget. "Even in death, she leaves me caged." Words became action. On February 5th, William made an unscheduled visit to Greystone Downs with Princess Catherine and their 3 children. Cameras captured the Wales family walking along the frozen edge of the estate's lake at sunset. No statements, no press conference, no fanfare, just a family on their land honouring a promise. But if Greystone Downs represented Camilla's most audacious move, Greenheath Estate delivered her most humiliating defeat. Located southeast of Forest Lodge, Greenheath spanned over 500 acres of undeveloped woodland bordering a historic Roman road and protected under a royal conservation deed. Insiders had long considered it ideal for high-level retreats, secure diplomatic gatherings, or world-class rehabilitation programs. Camilla had coveted it and had begun scheming for it almost immediately after Queen Elizabeth's passing. Misreading the sealed section of the will, and assuming Greenheath was little more than ceremonial land or unused hunting grounds. She was wrong. Greenheath came with a £37 million private trust, quietly accrued through decades of strategic transfers, and personally approved by the Queen, a financial buffer invisible to anyone not told to look. The discovery enraged Tom Parker BS, who had long envisioned a media-branded culinary wellness centre on the land, backed by Dubai investors and a French spa conglomerate. Promotional dinners had been drafted, elite society invitations prepared, organic wines, local produce, and Dutchy olive oils selected for showcase events with foreign dignitaries. The machine was running. Then, on January 30th, 2026, Princess and, acting for the Crown Trust Authority, sealed the asset transfer backdated to December 28th, officially granting William full rights to Greenheath, along with the £37 million trust. That evening, a royal black sedan delivered to Clarence House the final documents, and a private audio recording of Queen Elizabeth herself, explaining her wishes for Greenheath. The estate was to become a secure legacy zone for environmental education, child rehabilitation initiatives, and educational stewardship under the direct patronage of William and Catherine. Camilla convened Tom and 2 estate lawyers at Romley House that same night, immediately turning the conversation to legal maneuvering. She allegedly prepared to challenge Elizabeth's mental clarity at the time of the deed, accusing William and Catherine, aided by advisors, of manipulating the elderly Queen, a direct assault on the late monarch's legacy. King Charles, despite his frailty, issued a private warning within 48 hours. Any attempt to undermine Elizabeth's will would be treated as sedition against the Crown's memory. When the letter leaked to the Times on February 2nd, public outrage erupted. Pro-monarchy groups, constitutional scholars, and royal historians denounced the plot as morally and legally indefensible. Princess Catherine's quiet appearance at a Windsor Children's Hospice that day provided a defining visual counterpoint, dignity and compassion standing in absolute contrast to Camilla's scheming. On February 3rd at 9:46 a.m, William arrived at Greenheath alone, dressed in a simple navy wool coat, accompanied by a single aide, with no cameras or press. He signed the inaugural charter of the Greenheath Royal Future Trust, permanently closing the estate to commercial exploitation and codifying it under an ethical framework reflecting Elizabeth's environmental and educational vision. As the signing concluded, a Rolls-Royce appeared at the estate's western boundary. Camilla stepped out, dark glasses shielding her eyes, lips pressed tight, clutching a black leather folder to her chest. She did not speak, did not approach. She merely observed in complete silence the unfolding of a vision she could neither control nor reverse. Tom never appeared. By evening, Camilla had cancelled a royal culinary event scheduled for February 4th, her PR machine in abrupt retreat. Her Majesty Queen Camilla issued a single line. She regretted the recent developments and supported the King's reaffirmation of the late Queen's legacy. And then came Oakage, the final estate, the one that in many ways said everything. A sealed leather envelope bearing Elizabeth II's royal cipher was formally presented to Prime Minister Harriet Shawcross on the morning of February 3rd, confirming the transfer of Oakage to William. Unlike Balmoral or Sandringham, Oakage was not bound by Crown Estate regulations. It was a private holding under a unique clause in the Queen's will, a fortress of pastoral retreat bordering Thames forests, used by George VI for hunting, and containing the ruins of a Tudor chapel. Its estimated value of £18 million was beside the point. Oakage had been Queen Elizabeth's personal hearth during family disputes, a place of refuge, reflection, and resolve, the cradle of William's early summers, where he first learned what it meant to belong to something larger than himself. A final journal entry, tucked beside pressed lavender in the estate's library, spoke simply to future stewardship and the care of legacy. Even as the transfer was completed, Camilla and Tom lingered quietly, whispers circulating about a possible legal appeal via the Privy Purse Committee, claiming Oakage had benefited from public funds. William had anticipated this. He ordered a full review of restoration logs and security payments dating back to 1953, with forensic accountants cross-checking every line, every expense, every receipt. But Elizabeth, as always, had thought further ahead. The private will contained a clause titled Anticipatory Obstruction, nullifying any challenge to Oakage by individuals outside the Windsor bloodline or married into the family. After 2010, when the clause was read to senior royals in the Green Drawing Room, silence fell completely. Camilla stormed out. Tom reportedly cursed his lawyers, and Princess and, calm as ever, turned to King Charles and said simply, I always knew this day would come. That evening, William, Catherine, and their 3 children toured Oakage for the first time as its stewards. George, standing atop the old watchtower ruins, asked a question that those present say will stay with them forever. Will this be ours forever? William's answer was calm, measured, and entirely certain, as long as we protect it. Shortly after, a letter arrived from the late Queen's personal solicitor, Sir Jonathan Arborfield, containing a final passage from Elizabeth herself. If ever this estate is challenged, let it be known Oakage belongs not to power, but to patience. Let the one who bore the weight of the crown's future, not the burden of entitlement, carry it forward. Signed, Elizabeth R. Step back and consider what Elizabeth II achieved. She did not simply leave properties to her grandson. She built a legal fortress around him, estate by estate, clause by clause, anticipating commercial proposals, legal maneuvering, and public pressure campaigns years before they happened. Within her own family, she had identified actors whose priorities were not legacy or service, but personal gain, commercial branding, and the transformation of centuries of royal heritage into a hospitality portfolio. William, in contrast, embodied stewardship, quietly cataloguing wartime letters, repairing archival systems, walking the cedar groves with an elderly queen, listening more than he spoke. His response to every attempt to circumvent Elizabeth's wishes has been consistent and composed. No public escalation, no press statements, only action. Signing charters, walking with his children, letting the legal architecture built by his grandmother speak for itself, and it spoke loudly indeed. On February 3, 2026, as morning broke over Windsor Great Park and sunlight spilled across frost-kissed hedges, a new chapter of royal history had been quietly written, not in ceremony or proclamation, but in sealed trusts, notarized corteils, and a grandmother's handwritten certainty. Prince William walked the pathways of an estate that was fully and finally his, answering George and Charlotte's questions with patience, clarity, and the quiet confidence of a man entrusted with something precious. Camilla and Tom's ambitions were not merely defeated, they were rendered structurally impossible, neutralized by decades of foresight and planning. Every commercial scheme, back-channel lobbying effort, and mock-up with corporate logos had been anticipated and preempted. As a senior footman put it with quiet finality, this was not just a house. It was the Queen's final chess move. For William, these estates are responsibilities, not trophies. For Camilla and Tom, the battle is over. The covenants are unassailable, the Queen's voice preserved in letters, clauses, and private recordings, speaking with a clarity no living advocate could match. Legacy, Elizabeth understood, is not wealth or influence, but stewardship, integrity, and the courage to protect what matters, even from those closest. William inherited the estates, the mission, and the absolute certainty that the woman who knew him best trusted him most.